I rise to address the Greyhound Racing in New South Wales first report. In doing so, I begin by thanking the Secretariat and the Chair and the other members of the committee for conducting what was a difficult and engaged and interesting, if at times completely heart-rending inquiry. This report came about from a motion that I put to the House, and I put it to the House because the Greens believe the time has come to re-evaluate the treatment of animals used in racing, in the racing industries in general, and in particular in the greyhound industry. We recognise from the outset that there are a large number of owners and trainers and participants in the industry who take great care of their animals and look after their animals and treat their animals as if they're their own children. We recognise that dogs lucky enough to be born into households where they're looked after in that fashion do very well, and we raise no objection to those at all. However, the reality is, from the submissions and the evidence presented, there are a large number of animals that end up in appalling conditions. From the admissions of Greyhound Racing New South Wales itself, at least 3,000 dogs each year are killed before they reach their natural age of death. And that is because there is massive overbreeding in the industry. This is an industry that has failed time and again to get control over the issue of breeding more animals than are needed for the racetrack. It's an industry that has failed to deal with the simple processes of genetics and has opted for large numbers of breeding events rather than looking out to try and reduce the number of breeding events and increase the rate of animals who are suitable for racing. Combined with the massive overbreeding, there are ridiculously low rehoming rates. We saw evidence that only 50 animals each year were rehomed by industry programs such as greyhounds as pets. There are other non-industry programs that do their very best against huge resource constraints and against the problem of animals that have been poorly treated, have not been appropriately socialised and are therefore very difficult and very expensive to rehome. We also saw evidence of extremely poor treatment in rearing and training of animals. For example, the use of anti-barking muzzles, isolation and poor socialisation. And we also received evidence about export of greyhounds to Macau, where there is no animal welfare laws in place to protect those animals once they arrive. In fact, many animals have very short and very brutal and very nasty lives once they get to Macau. This was an inquiry that attracted enormous community engagement. Over 2,500 submissions were made to the inquiry, the vast majority from people who were deeply concerned about the treatment of dogs. Kaye, the animal welfare organisation, received a petition of more than 6,000 people demanding urgent action to stop the exploitation and abuse of dogs in New South Wales greyhound racing, and they sent that petition to the Premier in September. The question that I think is most important to arise from this inquiry is, why is it happening? Why do we have an industry that simultaneously is at war with where the regulator is at war with many of the operators in the industry, and at the same time has failed to resolve animal welfare issues? And it comes back to one key feature of this industry. It is a self-regulatory model in which the regulator and the industry, the body responsible for the commercial development of the industry, is in one organisation, Greyhounds New South Wales. There is a massive conflict of interest, Madam Deputy Chair, between the functions of regulating the industry, the functions of operating the stewards, setting the rules, making sure those rules are obeyed and enforced, on the one hand, and on the other hand being the developer of the industry, the commercial promoter. One of the phenomena we saw reported to us repeatedly was a situation in which people who spoke out against the organisation of the industry, against the commercial organisation of the industry, ended up with the stewards cracking down on them for allegations that were largely unfounded. It appears very strongly that elements within Greyhound Racing New South Wales use a regulatory function to defend their commercial activities. And even if they weren't, the board of Greyhound Racing New South Wales does have a split identity. On the one hand, it is the judge, jury, police force and lawmaker. On the other hand, it's responsible for making sure the industry is economically viable. Putting those two functions together for any group of people in any industry is an impossibility if there is any desire to get an outcome that works for the industry and maintains high levels of integrity. We argued strongly through the inquiry and in our dissenting report that those two functions should be split, that there should be a regulatory body that is responsible for animal welfare, that is responsible for animal welfare, responsible for ensuring the integrity of the industry, responsible for drug testing, and a separate body that takes commercial responsibility for the running of the tracks, for the operations of the tracks, and for the industry itself. Separating those two bodies out will remove the conflict of interest. It will remove the situation in which stewards can be used, exploited to enforce the commercial interests of the organisation or protect the clique within the ruling group within the commercial body from criticism. It is time, Madam Deputy Chair, for the New South Wales Government to listen to the urgent need to remove the conflict of interest. It was extremely disappointing to see the government's response to this inquiry, which ignored those concerns entirely and largely went on with a business-as-usual model. The potential integrity reforms flagged by the Baird government that were flagged by the Baird government will fail to address inherent conflicts of interest created by the single body being both regulator and promoter. There is little what will emerge is a body that still has little accountability and virtually no transparency. Greyhound Racing New South Wales will continue to operate well outside basic expectations of animal welfare and integrity and fairness to participants in the industry. Giving ICAC the power to investigate all racing bodies in New South Wales will help expose and reduce corruption, but given the size of the problem, it is little more than a band-aid on a gaping wound. Neither the committee nor the minister was prepared to tackle the problem head-on by separating the commercial and regulatory functions within the racing industry. The government also rejected a recommendation to investigate overbreeding and has signalled that it will continue to allow Greyhound Racing New South Wales to self-manage ongoing welfare reforms. One good finding of the committee was that we needed to address overbreeding. It is sad, very sad, and a sad state on the power that the racing codes, the animal racing codes in New South Wales, have over both major political parties, that the government failed to respond to that and rejected it. The thousands of greyhounds bred each year in New South Wales, few indeed make it to the track. The remainder are killed or abandoned, with only a tiny percentage being lucky enough to make it into a home. By the industry's own admissions, 3,000 dogs are killed each year because they are too slow or can no longer race due to an injury or illness. Even the committee recognised that something is wrong with an industry that breeds so many dogs that end up being killed or dumped. By rejecting the key recommendation to investigate overbreeding, the Baird-Stoner government, as it was then, condemned dogs in the industry to a brutal cycle of abandonment and high kill rates. Asking Greyhound Racing New South Wales to tinker with minor welfare reforms may make the Minister feel better about the issue, but it will do little to stop the routine killing and mistreatment of dogs. Both the committee and the government have failed at a fundamental level to read changing community expectations of animal welfare and outcomes for animals. Both the allowing thousands of dogs to be killed and many more to be mistreated in the name of sport has no place in a modern state like New South Wales. Madam Deputy Chair, I think there are other recommendations that both the committee and the government ignored, and those include increasing legal protections for greyhounds, including legislated standards for breeding, rearing and educating practices and lifetime tracking, and also increasing the transparency by mandating the collection of data on the number of greyhounds whelped, killed and injured each year, and prohibiting the live export of greyhounds for racing or breeding purposes.